Mahogany's family reported her missing. The next day, her body was found near Laurel Avenue in the Powderly neighborhood. Investigators determined at the scene she had been shot and say she was sexually assaulted. The details learned in court months ago are too disturbing to describe on television. District Danny Carr tells me upgrading charges for everyone sends the message that there's a price to pay for barbaric actions.
She texted her mother at 1 a.m. "I've been kidnapped. Send help. Don't call." 2 hours later, she was found shot in the back of the head, dumped on a road called Dead Man's Road. Her name was Mahogany Jackson. She was 20 years old, a mother to a 3-year-old daughter, a young woman enrolled in cosmetology school, building a future, trying to get her life in order. And on the night of February 24th, 2024, she was lured to an apartment in Birmingham, Alabama, by people she knew, not strangers, but acquaintances she considered part of her social circle. What happened next was a prolonged nightmare. Kidnapping, torture, sexual assault, and murder. And much of it was recorded by the people who did it. 8 people were arrested in connection with her death. For men, for women. All of them knew her. All of them participated in or witnessed what happened. And all of them are now facing capital murder charges, with prosecutors seeking the death penalty for multiple defendants. In this episode, we're going to show you the identities of all 8 suspects, the roles they played, and the recordings they made of their own crimes. We're going to break down how Birmingham police pieced together the case within 48 hours, the evidence that sealed the suspects' fates, and the legal battle that's still unfolding. And most importantly, we're going to examine what this case reveals about trust, toxic social circles, and the warning signs that could save your life or the life of someone you love. So if you've ever wondered how someone can be betrayed by their own friends, if you've ever questioned whether you can truly trust the people around you, or if you've ever needed to know the signs of a dangerous social circle, stay with me. Welcome to the Crime Anatomy. I'm your host, and today we're dissecting one of the most disturbing betrayal cases to come out of Alabama. A 20-year-old mother, lured by people she trusted, tortured for hours, and executed. This isn't a story about a stranger in the shadows. This is about friends who became monsters. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Stories like this aren't just content. They're warnings. They show us how trust can be weaponized, how quickly a life can be stolen, and what we must do to recognize danger before it's too late. Before we dive into the horror of that night, you need to understand who Mahogany Jackson really was, because the headlines will tell you she was a victim. The news reports will tell you she was murdered. But those labels don't even begin to capture the young woman behind the tragedy. Mahogany Jackson was born on April 29, 2003, in Birmingham, Alabama. She was raised in the Birmingham city school system, grew up in a family that loved her deeply, and became a mother herself when she was still a teenager. Her daughter, Nydia, was 3 years old at the time of Mahogany's death, a bright-eyed little girl who was the center of her mother's world. In the months before her death, she had enrolled in cosmetology school. She wanted to become a stylist, a career that would give her independence, income, and the ability to provide for Nydia in ways she hadn't been able to before. It was a concrete step toward the life she envisioned, a life where she wasn't just surviving but thriving. But perhaps the most telling detail about where Mahogany's head was in the weeks before she died comes from a text message she sent to her mother in December 2023. It was simple, direct, and full of determination. "I'm 20 and I'm ready to get my life in order." Think about that for a second. She was at a turning point. She was making a conscious decision to change her trajectory, to focus on what mattered, to leave behind the things and the people who were holding her back. Because Mahogany had been struggling with something that many young people face: toxic relationships. Her mother later told reporters that Mahogany had a history of loving the wrong people. She had been part of a social circle that wasn't good for her. And in the months before her death, she had been trying to distance herself from certain individuals. She was pulling away. She was setting boundaries. She was choosing her daughter and her future over the people who were dragging her down. But leaving toxic circles isn't always easy. There's pressure to stay. There's guilt. There's the fear of being seen as disloyal or stuck up. And sometimes There's the dangerous belief that you can maintain just enough contact to keep the peace without getting pulled back in. That belief can be fatal. On the night of February 24th, 2024, Mahogany was lured back into the orbit of people she had been trying to avoid. Someone reached out to her, someone she knew, someone she may have considered a friend or at least a familiar face. The pretense was social, casual, harmless. Come hang out. Come to the apartment. It'll be fine. And Mahogany, perhaps out of obligation, perhaps out of a misplaced sense of loyalty, perhaps simply because she didn't realize the danger she was walking into, went. It was a decision that would cost her everything. Mahogany's family has been left to grapple with a loss that defies comprehension. Her mother, Gail, has had to bury her daughter, raise her granddaughter, and relive the horror of that night over and over again in courtrooms and news reports. Her father, Mahogany Jackson Jr., has had to face the unbearable reality that his child was tortured and killed by people she knew. And little Nydia, just 3 years old, lost her primary caregiver, the person who loved her most in the world, the mother who was working so hard to build a better life for both of them. Mahogany Jackson wasn't just a statistic. She wasn't just another name in a true crime story. She was a young woman with dreams, with plans, with a daughter who needed her. She was someone who was actively trying to turn her life around, to make better choices, to be better. And she was betrayed in the worst way imaginable, by people she trusted, in a place she thought was safe, on a night that should have been ordinary. Let's rewind to the night of February 24th, 2024. Because to understand how a 20-year-old mother ended up tortured and executed by her own friends, you have to understand the setup, the lure, the trap, and the people who orchestrated it. On that night, someone reached out to her, someone she knew, someone who convinced her to come to an apartment in the Powderly area of Birmingham. The Powderly neighborhood is a residential area on Birmingham's west side, a mix of single-family homes, apartment complexes, and quiet streets. It's not the kind of place where you'd expect something horrific to happen. It's not a dark alley or an abandoned warehouse. It's a neighborhood where people live, where families raise children, where life goes on. And that's exactly what made it so dangerous. Because the apartment Mahogany was lured to wasn't some stranger's lair. It was a place occupied by people she knew, people she may have hung out with before, people who on the surface seemed like friends. But they weren't friends. They were predators. Within hours of Mahogany's arrival, 8 people would be implicated in what happened to her. 8 individuals who either participated in or witnessed the kidnapping, torture, sexual assault, and murder of a young mother. Let me introduce you to them. Mahogany Jackson, a woman who was part of the group that night, who would later face capital murder charges for her role in what happened. Blair Green, another woman present during the ordeal, charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. Taja Lewis, also known as Tajana Lewis in some reports, a woman who participated in or witnessed the crimes and now faces life in prison or the death penalty. Francis Harris, a man who investigators believe may have fired the fatal shot that killed Mahogany. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty for him. Jeremiah McDowell, charged with capital murder during first-degree kidnapping and sodomy, another defendant facing the death penalty. Brandon Pope, also charged with capital murder and facing the death penalty. Prosecutors say he was directly involved in the most heinous aspects of the crime. Sinai McCall, also reported as Sinya McCall, a woman charged with felony murder, later upgraded to capital murder by a grand jury. Ariana Robinson, also referred to as Ariana Robinson in some reports, another woman facing capital murder charges for her role in the crime. For men, for women, all of them knew Mahogany. All of them were part of the social circle she had been trying to escape. And on the night of February 24th, they turned on her. We don't know exactly what the initial pretense was. We don't know what excuse was used to get Mahogany to that apartment. But what we do know from police statements, court filings, and investigative reports is that once she was inside, everything changed. The social visit became a trap. The friends became captors. And Mahogany Jackson became a prisoner in a place she thought was safe. According to investigators, what followed was a prolonged, brutal ordeal that lasted several hours. Mahogany was restrained. She was beaten. She was humiliated. She was subjected to sexual violence by multiple people, and much of it was recorded. Let that sink in for a moment. The people who did this to Mahogany, people she knew, people she may have trusted, documented their own crimes. They pulled out their phones. They hit record, and they captured the torture and assault of a young mother who was begging for her life. Why? What kind of person does that? Investigators have said that the recordings were shared among the group, that they were aware of what was happening, that they participated or stood by and watched. The existence of this video evidence would later become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, but it also became a source of unbearable pain for Mahogany's family, who had to live with the knowledge that their daughter's final hours were captured on video. The details that have been released publicly are horrific. Court filings and police statements describe Mahogany being dragged by her hair, forced to strip, restrained with handcuffs, and subjected to repeated physical and sexual assaults. Prosecutors have said that at least 2 of the suspects also face second-degree assault charges for the physical violence they inflicted on her. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden act of violence. This was sustained, deliberate, and coordinated cruelty. And at some point during that nightmare, Mahogany managed to do something that would later help investigators piece together what happened. She got access to her phone. We don't know exactly how. Maybe her captors let their guard down for a moment. Maybe she was able to reach it while they were distracted. But somehow in the midst of that horror, Mahogany Jackson sent a text message to her mother. It was brief, it was desperate, and it was heartbreaking. I've been kidnapped. Send help. Don't call. Read that again. Don't call. She knew that if her mother called, the phone would ring, the captors would hear it, and whatever slim chance she had of getting help would be gone. So she texted. She gave her mother just enough information to know she was in danger, and she begged her not to do anything that would alert her captors. It was a lifeline, a silent scream for help, a last-ditch effort to survive. But it didn't work, because according to investigators, the suspects discovered the message. They realized Mahogany had reached out. They forced her to reveal her phone password, and they saw what she had sent. At that point, the group knew they were on borrowed time. They knew that Mahogany's mother had been alerted. They knew that help might be on the way, and they knew they had to act fast. So they made a decision. They decided to kill her. Mahogany was moved from the apartment. She was taken to a vehicle, and she was driven to a remote location on the outskirts of Birmingham, a stretch of road known locally by a name that would become grimly appropriate, Dead Man's Road. The official name is 17th Street Southwest, near Laurel Avenue. But to people in the area, it's Dead Man's Road, a desolate stretch where bodies have been found before, where people go to dump things they don't want discovered, where the darkness swallows secrets. And that's where Mahogany Jackson's life ended. She was shot once in the back of the head, execution style. A single bullet that ended everything. Her dreams, her plans, her future. Her chance to be the mother she was working so hard to become. Her body was dumped on the side of the road and covered with a mattress. A crude attempt to hide what had been done. And then the 8 people who had tortured, assaulted, and murdered her drove away, leaving Mahogany Jackson alone in the darkness. But they didn't get far. Let's slow down and walk through the final hours of Mahogany Jackson's life in detail. Because this isn't just about what happened. It's about understanding the calculated cruelty, the betrayal, and the moments when everything could have been different. Mahogany arrived at the apartment on the night of February 24th, 2024. She likely thought she was walking into a social gathering. Maybe she expected to hang out for a bit, catch up with people she knew, and then head home to her daughter. But the moment she walked through that door, she was trapped. We don't know the exact sequence of events in the first minutes. We don't know if the violence started immediately or if there was a period of normalcy before things turned dark. But what we do know from police statements and court filings is that at some point, Mahogany was restrained. Handcuffs were used. She was physically overpowered, and she was subjected to a prolonged ordeal that would last for hours. The details that have been made public are almost too horrific to comprehend. Mahogany was dragged by her hair. She was forced to strip. She was beaten repeatedly. And she was sexually assaulted by multiple people. Prosecutors have said that the assault involved first-degree sodomy, a charge that reflects the severity and nature of the sexual violence inflicted on her. Multiple suspects have been charged with this crime, indicating that more than one person participated in the assault. And throughout all of this, the group was recording. Think about what that means. These weren't people acting in a moment of rage or passion. These were people who were calm enough, calculated enough, to pull out their phones and document what they were doing. They were creating evidence of their own crimes. They were capturing Mahogany's suffering for what? Entertainment? Proof? Bragging rights? The existence of these recordings has been confirmed by investigators and referenced repeatedly in court proceedings. Prosecutors have said that the video evidence corroborates much of what they allege happened that night. But they've also been careful to withhold certain details from public filings, both to protect Mahogany's family from further trauma and to preserve the integrity of the case. For Mahogany's mother, Gail Maddox, the knowledge that her daughter's final hours were recorded has been an additional layer of agony. In interviews, she's spoken about the unbearable pain of knowing that somewhere, on someone's phone or in an evidence locker, there's video of her daughter being tortured. Mahogany was moved from the apartment. She was taken to a vehicle. We don't know which suspect drove or how many people were in the car. And she was driven to a remote location on the outskirts of Birmingham. The destination was 17th Street Southwest, near Laurel Avenue. Locals call it Dead Man's Road, a desolate stretch of pavement where bodies have been found before, where people go to dump things they don't want discovered. It's the kind of place where you can commit a crime and not be seen, where the darkness swallows secrets, where a gunshot might not even be heard. And that's where Mahogany Jackson's life ended. Investigators believe that Frances Harris fired the fatal shot, though the exact details of who pulled the trigger and who else was present are still being litigated in court. What we know for certain is this. Mahogany was shot once in the back of the head, execution style, a single bullet that ended everything. She didn't have a chance to run. She didn't have a chance to fight. She was murdered in cold blood by people she knew, people she may have trusted, people who had spent hours torturing her before deciding to end her life. Her body was dumped on the side of the road and covered with a mattress. A crude, callous attempt to hide what had been done. Early in the morning, a witness discovered Mahogany's body. The exact identity of the witness hasn't been publicly disclosed, but police were called immediately. Officers arrived at the scene and found Mahogany under the mattress, a gunshot wound to the back of her head. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and within hours, the Birmingham Police Department launched one of the most intensive investigations in recent memory. News of Mahogany's death spread quickly. By midday, local media outlets were reporting the murder. By evening, the story had gone national. A 20-year-old mother, kidnapped, tortured, sexually assaulted, and executed by people she knew. The outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Community members were horrified. Local leaders called for swift justice. And Mahogany's family, her mother, her father, her extended relatives, were left to grapple with a loss so sudden, so violent, so senseless, that it defied comprehension. Gail Maddox, Mahogany's mother, would later describe the moment she received the news as the worst moment of her life. Her daughter, her bright, loving, determined daughter, was gone. And no amount of justice, no number of arrests, no length of prison sentence would ever bring her back. But even in the depths of that grief, Gail made a decision. She would not let her daughter's death be in vain. She would speak out. She would demand accountability. And she would fight to make sure Mahogany's name stood for something more than tragedy. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic friends? What would you have done in Mahogany's situation? Your voice matters, and I want to hear from you. Let's keep this conversation going. The investigation into Mahogany Jackson's murder moved with remarkable speed. Within 48 hours of the discovery of her body, Birmingham police had obtained arrest warrants and taken all 8 suspects into custody. Investigators had several critical pieces of evidence that allowed them to move quickly. First, there was the desperate text message Mahogany had sent to her mother. That message established a timeline and confirmed that she had been kidnapped. It also gave investigators a starting point. Mahogany had been in danger. She had reached out for help, and something had gone terribly wrong. Second, there was the video evidence. The recordings made by the suspects themselves showed the torture and sexual assault. They documented the crimes in graphic detail, and they provided investigators with irrefutable proof of what had happened. Third, there were witness statements. People who lived near the apartment in the Powderly area reported hearing disturbances. People who knew the suspects began coming forward with information. And the witness who discovered Mahogany's body provided critical details about the location and condition of the scene. Fourth, there was forensic evidence from both the apartment and the crime scene. DNA samples, fingerprints, ballistic evidence. All of it pointed to the same group of people. And finally, there was the fact that the suspects were known to Mahogany. This wasn't a case of tracking down a stranger. Investigators knew who to look for, and they moved quickly to bring them in. Within 2 days, all 8 suspects were in custody. For men, for women, all of them charged with kidnapping, first-degree sodomy, and felony murder. As the investigation progressed and the case moved through preliminary hearings, a grand jury upgraded the charges for all 8 suspects to capital murder, a charge that carries the possibility of the death penalty in Alabama. The charges against the suspects reflect the severity and coordinated nature of the crime. Capital murder during first-degree kidnapping and sodomy. This charge applies to all 8 suspects and reflects the fact that Mahogany was killed during the commission of other violent felonies. First-degree sodomy. Multiple suspects are charged with this crime, indicating that more than one person participated in the sexual assault. Second-degree assault. 2 of the suspects face additional charges for the physical violence they inflicted on Mahogany. Prosecutors announced that they would seek the death penalty for 3 of the defendants. Brandon Pope Francis Harris, believed to have fired the fatal shot, Jeremiah McDowell. The decision to seek capital punishment reflects the aggravated and coordinated nature of the crime. Prosecutors have argued that the prolonged torture, the sexual assault, the execution-style killing, and the attempt to hide the body all justify the most severe penalty available under Alabama law. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case is the role that technology played, both as a weapon and as evidence. The suspects used their phones to record the torture and assault. They documented their own crimes, creating a digital trail that would later be used against them in court. But technology also played a critical role in Mahogany's attempt to save herself. Her desperate text message to her mother was a lifeline, a silent scream for help that, while ultimately unsuccessful in saving her life, provided investigators with crucial evidence and a timeline of events. The dual nature of technology in this case is a stark reminder of how smartphones and social media have changed the landscape of violent crime. On one hand, they provide victims with new ways to call for help discreetly. On the other hand, they give perpetrators new ways to document, share, and even celebrate their crimes. The arrests brought a measure of relief to Birmingham's community, but they also raised difficult questions. How could 8 people, 4 men and 4 women, participate in or witness such horrific violence and not stop it? How could people who knew Mahogany, who may have considered her a friend, turn on her so brutally? Local officials expressed horror at the details of the case. Community leaders held vigils and called for justice. And Mahogany's family faced the unbearable task of attending court hearings and seeing the people accused of killing their daughter. As the case has moved through the court system, there have been the usual pre-trial motions and hearings. Defense attorneys have challenged certain aspects of the state's case, filed motions to suppress statements, and raised questions about competency and admissibility of evidence. But the core facts of the case have remained consistent. Mahogany Jackson was lured to an apartment by people she knew. She was kidnapped and tortured for hours. She sent a desperate text message begging for help, and she was executed and dumped on the side of a road. The video evidence, the text message, the witness statements, and the forensic evidence all point to the same conclusion. 8 people participated in or witnessed the murder of a 20-year-old mother, and they must be held accountable. One question that has haunted investigators, the community, and Mahogany's family is simply, why? Why did this happen? What could possibly motivate 8 people to torture and kill someone they knew? The answer, as is often the case in crimes like this, is complex and unsatisfying. There's no single motive that makes sense. There's no explanation that justifies what happened. What we do know is that toxic social dynamics, group mentality, and a complete disregard for human life all played a role. When violence is normalized within a group, when empathy is absent, when people feed off each other's cruelty, horrific things can happen. And Mahogany Jackson paid the ultimate price. In the weeks and months following Mahogany Jackson's murder, her family and the Birmingham community have struggled to make sense of an unspeakable tragedy. For Mahogany's mother, Gail Maddox, the loss has been devastating. In interviews and at court hearings, she's spoken about the unbearable pain of losing her daughter, not to an accident, not to illness, but to deliberate, calculated violence inflicted by people Mahogany knew. Gail has described sleepless nights, the constant replay of what-ifs, and the anguish of knowing that her daughter's final hours were filled with terror and pain. She's spoken about the text message Mahogany sent, the desperate plea for help that came too late, and the guilt she feels for not being able to save her daughter. But Gail has also been determined to ensure that Mahogany is remembered as more than a victim. She's spoken publicly about her daughter's dreams, her love for her daughter Nydia, her plans to become a stylist, and her determination to get her life in order. She was trying. Gail has said in interviews, she was really trying to do better, to be better, and they took that away from her. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this tragedy is the impact on Mahogany's daughter, Nydia. At just 3 years old, she lost her mother, her primary caregiver, the person who loved her most in the world. Nydia is too young to fully understand what happened, but as she grows older, she'll have to grapple with the knowledge that her mother was murdered, that her life was stolen by people who should have been friends. The family has sought to protect Nydia from media exposure and public attention, focusing instead on providing her with stability, love, and support. But the loss of her mother will be something she carries for the rest of her life. As of now, the legal proceedings against the 8 suspects are ongoing. Pre-trial hearings have addressed issues of competency, admissibility of evidence, and the scope of the charges. Defense attorneys have done what defense attorneys do. They've challenged the state's case, filed motions, and argued for their clients. That's their job, and it's an essential part of the legal system. But the evidence against the suspects is substantial. The video recordings, the text message, the witness statements, the forensic evidence, all of it points to a coordinated, brutal crime. Prosecutors have made it clear that they intend to seek the maximum penalties allowed under Alabama law. For 3 of the defendants, Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, and Jeremiah McDowell, that means the death penalty. For the other 5, Giovanni Clapp, Blair Green, Taja Lewis, Sinai McCall, and Ariana Robinson, it means life in prison without the possibility of parole. One of the most difficult aspects of the case for Mahogany's family has been the existence of the video recordings. Prosecutors have said that the recordings document much of what happened to Mahogany during those final hours, and they've been used as evidence in court proceedings. Mahogany's death is a stark reminder that sometimes those instincts are right, and sometimes ignoring them can be fatal. Mahogany Jackson wasn't just a victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a young woman with dreams of becoming a stylist, of building a better life for her little girl. She was 20 years old, and she was ready to get her life in order. She sent a text begging for help, and hours later, she was dead, betrayed by people she knew, tortured, executed, dumped on a road called Dead Man's Road. Her daughter, Nydia, will grow up without her mother. Her family will carry the weight of this loss for the rest of their lives. And 8 people, 4 men and 4 women, will face justice for what they did. But justice doesn't bring Mahogany back. It doesn't erase the horror of her final hours. It doesn't answer the question that haunts everyone who hears this story. How could people she knew do this to her? The answer is uncomfortable and complex. It's about toxic social dynamics. It's about the normalization of violence. It's about the absence of empathy. And it's about the danger of ignoring warning signs and staying in circles that don't value your life. So what can you do? Drop a comment below. Tell me, what state or country are you watching from? Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic friends? What do you think could have saved Mahogany's life? Your voice matters. Your perspective matters. And I want to hear from you. Because this isn't just about one tragic night in Birmingham. This is about a pattern, a cycle, a system that fails to protect vulnerable people from the dangers hiding in plain sight. And the only way we break that cycle is together. This is the crime anatomy. We don't just tell the story. We dissect the system that let it happen. Because understanding the crime is the first step to preventing the next one. Rest in power, Mahogany Jackson.